My husband, Neil, has been a real balance for me because I grew up with teachers as parents, and I became a teacher. I've always been so serious. But he came along and he lightened up my life. But one day we were not too long before, in fact, just a week before he passed on, I asked him, I'd been wanting to ask him this for a while. I said, do you know where you're going? And he looked at me. He didn't quip. He didn't say something funny as he usually would. He said, yes, my sins have been forgiven. I know that. And I know where I'm going. I've had an amazing life. I've had 2 good wives. I have wonderful children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a wonderful family. I've been able to go anywhere I wanted to. I've traveled the world. I've gone everywhere and done everything I've ever wanted to do. And I have no regrets. No regrets. But when I get to heaven, I'm going to look up St. Peter and I'm going to ask him, where is the nearest Italian restaurant? That is my husband. He was funny, even in a very serious conversation.
Now, wait a minute, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom 5 times before I'm able to speak on camera.
You need some lipstick?
No, I usually try to do without that. He always said, he told us how old he was. He's 87 years old, he's 86, he's 85, he was 80 or whatever. But one time when I was a kid, for some reason we were talking about, how old he was. And he never would say, how old he was. And I was at the age that we'd been learning about the Pilgrims and the Mayflower and Christopher Columbus and, coming over. And so he never would tell us how old he was. And so I finally asked him, I said, well, did you come over on the Mayflower? And it's like, well, yeah, I did. And so from that point on, whenever he would say something about being old, it's like, well, you did come over on the Mayflower. So anyway, so I think he was actually older than 87. I think he got 1492 confused with 1942.
My favorite memory of Grampy is when we went to spend 2 weeks there when my parents were in England.
My favorite memory when I go to the kitchen. He winks at me.
My favorite memory of Grampy was when we were there for 2 weeks. I talked too much, so he would pay me $1 to stop talking for an hour.
My favorite memory of Grampy is his jokes because they're really funny.
When some of the family were traveling together, we went to Puerto Vallarta and we were having dinner one evening, and Neil wanted to order a bottle of wine for the table. And he asked the waiter for CRW. And the waiter and the manager consulted a while, and then they came back to the table. They were just apologizing. They said, sir, we don't have CRW, and we just apologize for not having that. And Neil said, what? You don't have cheap red wine? And the table just cracked up. And so ever since then, it became a Neil way of asking for a glass of wine. And as many of you know, Neil always kept a box of CRW at his house.
Neil was my father-in-law, but was always more like a dad to me. My earliest memories with him were when Margaret and I were dating, and Sunday evening would roll around. Neil would have one of his famous Chateaubriands cooking on his charcoal grill. He always gave me the business about the fact that I would just seem to always show up on Sunday evening with my hat in hand when a tenderloin was about ready to be put in the grill. And they were the best. Neil was a great influence on the two of us. He emphasized saving for the future, but to enjoy life to its fullest. To that point, we made a lot of trips with him and Shirley and had too many great experiences to count. He will be missed, but those memories will live on.
Every time that my family would leave after a visit to Grampy and Wheezy. My grandfather would stand in the driveway and fake cry. He'd wave and laugh and fake cry, mostly fake cry. And everyone that was in the car that was driving away would be hanging out the windows and fake crying and waving. And this would carry on a really, really way too long. And we'd round the corner, and just as Grampy and Wheezy were about to go out of sight, we'd see them stop fake crying and kind of breathe a sigh of relief and head back inside. That memory will stick with me a long time.
About a year after my mom married Neil, they took me and my two brothers on a road trip. We drove all the way up to Maine, pulling a pop-up trailer, and back in about 2 weeks. And we saw really cool stuff, a lot of historical things. And he really wanted us to see Washington, D.C., but unfortunately the day we got there, it was the middle of July, lots of tourists and no parking. And he was driving along, I believe it was a Cadillac, pulling a pop-up trailer. And when he pulled into a spot that he finally found, it was a little too short. And before we could even get out of the car, a voice came over a loudspeaker and said, you cannot park there. So Neil put it into reverse, pulled away, and as we left Washington, D.C., he said, "Take a good look, that's all you're gonna get."
He was always wanting us to have a good work ethic. I mean, if one of the things I remember every day when he'd come home from work, "You got a job today? Did you get a job today?" Well, one time he and I were out playing basketball in the driveway, and he said, "Now, if you get a job and you earn the money, you can buy anything that you want." And I said, "You mean I can buy anything that I want if I earn the money?" He said, "That's right." I said, "You mean if I go out and I push a lawnmower around here and I make a couple of dollars, I can go down to the Breedy's convenience store and I can buy myself." He said, "If you make the money, you can buy anything that you want." So guess what I did? I went down and bought my after mowing the yard.
I don't know that the church is going to let me use this one.
That's one thing that he really pushed, was for us to have a good work ethic and to be able to stand on our own and do for ourselves and not have to rely on somebody else to pull us along.
So, I am one of those people that has never really felt the need to date. I just really enjoy my singleness, and every time I would visit Wheezy and Grampy would always ask me if I have a boyfriend yet, and I would always tell him no. So this last time when I visited him, the day that he met Jesus, he was sleeping, and I told him, "Hey, you were supposed to wait until you knew I wasn't going to be an old maid. But I want you to know that a fella caught my eye, and I've been praying for him, and I promise I will not be an old maid forever." And then he raised his eyebrows at me. So even when he was sleeping and he was about to meet Jesus, he was still giving me attitude about it, like, yeah, we'll see about that.
Okay, my name's Debbie Parkins. I'm a registered nurse with Interim Hospice, and I come out to visit with Mr. Hatch. And I needed to ask him some questions for a mental exam. And one of the questions was, can you spell the world backwards? And right off the top of his head, he goes, SKCAB, and I cannot do it, DLROW. And I said, what did you spell? And he goes, world backwards. I said, no, you didn't. And he goes, yes, I did. Backwards, and he had spelled it backwards, and world. And he had spelled it so fast that I couldn't keep up with it. So I wanted to give him the harder question, can you count backwards by 7 from 100? But I knew he could, so we just stopped right there.
He's an overachiever.
Okay, we have some Grampyisms here for you. Come here, Mom. Come join me. TMN. TMN. That's too much noise. That's whenever we'd be putting away the dishes. Cool. Cool. Instead of cool. Let's see. What's some other ones? It's soup time. I grew up with that one. Ooh, what's that? That's funny food. And that was in regards to vegetables and salmon and pretty much everything that I cooked. It's gonna be a cold nose. That was in regards to Mom. Here she is. You're not in the, there you go.
There I am.
Is that Marilyn? No, I know who that is. That's old Cold Nose.
Yeah.
Let's see, keep it down to a roar. He would use that one often when he was going to bed. And then, where are you going?
Where are you going?
Where are you going?
And it didn't have anything to do with where they were going. You just didn't hear it. And it didn't make any difference time of day or anything. Where are you going? That was his thing. What did you say? That was his,
Yeah. And we know.
his thing.
We know where he's going.
Yes, we do.
This isn't a Grampyism, but it's very special to me. The very last thing that he said to me was after I was giving him some kisses and told him that I loved him. He was feeling better as he was going to sleep that last night, and he said, not too juicy now. So I gave him some more kisses and told him I loved him. So love you, Dad. See you soon. Or hopefully not soon. Later.